So, team, welcome back. Hope my audio is fine and the video too. So, continuing from where we left and trying to get focus back onto automation with Python, that being the main platform or programming language that enables us to achieve a lot of progress overall in that space. So, and just a quick recap, team, for those of you who must have missed the earlier session. Primarily, what I wanted the team to work on was make sure that we've installed Python, the latest interpreter. I think the version that I installed today, in fact, wanted to do a fresh installation. I cleaned up the older versions and went with the latest. So 3.13 is the one that I downloaded. You could look at whatever is convenient because we're going to do a lot of programming team a little bit today, but extensively as we keep going further on. So PyCharm is primarily the idea that is the one that I said of choice, but you can use any of them. And we will be going through a lot of areas things and what are the popular libraries for AI within Python that are used, especially for machine learning side, all the way to data analysis. So some really cool areas where data becomes very important and how that is being manipulated. That is key. And at the end, analytics are very important as well. How we visualize the overall execution of these bots or anything that we build. Eventually, the focus has been on test automation for us, at least for most part of the audience. But a lot of what we will learn will be very standard on how Python is used in overall automation. Is it used for tasks or quality assurance or even regular workflow? That is of choice. And that is where Python as an automation tool will also be used within the development needs, not just within the testing areas of test automation. Specifically talking about automation. All right, so there are multiple aspects team when we're talking about automation. And at a high level, we could divide any of the interfaces that we deal with, be it mobile applications or web-based applications or even desktop applications. That either got a user interface that is linked to some kind of a programming at the back along with a backend database. And with a lot of popularity in these days goes towards API. So the whole purpose of the fact that when it comes to human interactions, we have a user interface for the human to be able to interact and interface with the application itself. For an API, it is primarily system to system. So there's no need for a human interface. There's no availability for it unless you ping it. You start looking at information to get from it. So to be able to get into depth and write our own codes, we need to get the basics of API team and how they function. Then we need to look at how Python requests for API, and then we look at how we can do test automation for multiple endpoints or API. So, and we could also integrate test data. All of this, a good option or a tool that has been very popular in the market has been a Karate test automation framework or Karate framework for test automation. And it serves both UI and API. Typically, otherwise, when it comes to UI automation, we'll only look at Selenium as a popular one, not only, but just the fact that Selenium is popular, Playwright also that is pretty popular. So we will explore some of these themes. The focus is on how we do our fundamentals in using Python. Uh, Karate framework, there are also other tutorials around it, so we can take a look at that. So today we're going to start with the basics of API schemes and how they work for us, how we can then look at automating them. So unless we know the basics or fundamentals on um, what is the manual process of how an uh, request response model works, it won't help us to move forward. If we get the document, is it? If yes, a beginner. So instead of me spending too much time in writing the entire document while I speak, I thought this would be a good document which, let me think. All right. It's a short document. It goes through some of the basic fundamentals and then what we could do within Python. So it should be an interesting document that I'll share with, and I'll put it also into the itlearn.com account. So it will be easy for you to refer to. All right, let me quickly go through this theme. You'll get a perspective of what it is. Once we do that, I have got the latest version of Python, like I mentioned, and I also got the iCharm Community Edition going. So we should be able to start writing a few API code and then slowly build on it. Hopefully, within the next 2 days, 2 sessions, we should be able to complete the API part of it and then move on to UI. Within 2 weeks, we should be able to finish up with these specific new topics that we're talking about. Then it will help us to move on with a few others. All right. So basics of APIs, this is what we're trying to focus on now. Let me switch it back to the screen. So there are detailed trainings available that have gone through at length a lot of API training streams. So you can refer them, but this is not relevant at the moment for us. What is relevant is what an API is, how it works, how we can program it. So at a fundamental level, team, this is how two applications are able to interact with each other. And the whole programming aspect behind it builds up an API. And you will notice that there's also web services and microservices that keep coming up as a word. But as a common umbrella, we're just referring them as API. But as we get finite into the development and there are approaches of how we are using web services into the entire new building of solutions, that is where you'll see web service being used as a term more. But otherwise, primarily, two applications, all they're trying to do is interact with each other. So it's almost like an exchange of information. One person is a requester, the other person is a responder. So just as in a barter system or how coins have evolved through our entire human evolution, as commerce started growing, it grew into cash and checks and e-transfers and so on. So at the end of there is a request being made and there's a response that is being requested. So since there are two applications that are talking to each other, one of them is sending a request and the other is sending back a response. So for this specific approach, the entire guidelines has been very specifically put in place here. All that we're trying to do is, let me see if I can keep the thing to illustrate. a quick one. Then it will be just to get the point. All right. Let me just take color to red. Okay. So, like I was saying, there's one application and then there's the other application. So, this could be nothing but a bunch of code streams at the end of it. So, the protocol, REST protocol that is being used right now is we have a requester who's sending information. Am I getting color to? Not yet. And there is a response that is coming back to the requester. Almost like you go to a restaurant and look at the menu and you know what options you have and you place the order with the waiter. The waiter then goes into the private kitchen, places the order, gets the food prepared, and then again comes back to interact with us. So the first and the second parties, these two parties are the only one that are interacting. What is happening at the back end of it is could be a lot of stuff that is happening just to prepare things and get it ready. So some of the responses could be that, you know what, I'm not available. Responses could be that I did not understand your response, or a response could be that the restaurant is now closed, or that, you know what, or even a response could be that, perfect, I got what you want. I'll prepare it and send it back to you. So there are multiple ways that can happen to you. But each time that happens, there is always some kind of a data layer associated with it. So this database that is there at the back end of where the actual server is. So there is the client or the requester who's calling for the service, and then there's the provider who is trying to fulfill the need of the service. So at any point, there are certain changes that can happen. In a simple system of our way of looking at applications, let's say we have a website and some user is trying to log in. Okay, so login is a request. To be able to log in, the requester will definitely send username, password, and any other authentication like a token needed. Your actual system that is doing your Active Directory or single sign-on will have to go into the database and do a read on it. Or let's say there is a new request coming in the form of an API for a sign up. So there's no user existing, and then there's a request being sent. In that, we require more data like first name, last name, and so on. Then what are we doing here? We are creating a record. Let's say someone does a profile update. What are we doing? We're doing an update. Or someone is totally deleting their account in a application. Then you're deleting. So these are the basic operations team. There are different changes that can happen at the back end because of your request. Requests can be accepted, rejected, denied due to multiple reasons. These become the fundamental REST way of doing the representational state transport. So of how you interact with different applications. So that's the example that I was talking about, like if you need to sign in, if you need to do any specific request. And this is a very simple format of API transaction. But eventually, as a user goes through each and every page of the application or feature, there's something that is happening to you. And these form the CRUD operation. So there are things that you'll create, you'll adding new things or reading, you're updating, or you're deleting. So at any database level, this becomes the fundamental thing. That is what API also will try and do. So similar to the CRUD as a general DB concept, we're looking at these are the different methods or actions that we are able to send using HTTP protocol uh, to do the similar thing. So for example, the standard word get will actually read something for us. A put will update a existing record. So that's simple difference between a put and a post. Post is a new thing that you're creating. So even if there's an existing record, it'll make a duplicate of it and maybe point it to the latest one all the time. But post will always create a new record. So put is updating an existing one, post is creating a new one, patch is partially update an existing record. So sometimes you are not trying to update the entire record itself, but certain data elements within it. At the end of it, your request will contain this information team. What is the end point? So the first thing that becomes very important is I know that I have to perform an action, but where is that application residing? So that is called your endpoint URL. And each API will have a unique endpoint at the end of it. We look at some examples. Website has been handy in past. Let's see how it looks now. The second thing that we're giving is the method. One of these methods that we need to send. Then you can send some header or token, rather identification, if needed. So sometimes you're trying to log in, but it requires an additional token to be generated to be able to do it. And in certain cases, you also need data or a body. So primarily that can be in an XML format or JSON format and so on. JavaScript object notation or the JSON format has become very standard now. So a lot of our practice will go around JSON and how we handle JSON file, JSON data within a Python code. So that becomes your request. Once you send a request, I'll come back to some of these examples in a bit. These are the possible responses you will get at a very high level team. So as we progress and we keep using each of these on a daily basis, you'll get more familiarized. So there is a whole series with 100 or starting with 1 and a 3-digit number. And it's general information. It is giving nothing more than a basic information. So in certain cases, it doesn't require it to do any activity or any CRUD operations and so on. The 200 series is the one which is typically being looked for. So if it is 200, that means all is okay. All went well. The request was well understood. Everything looked good. Server could work on it and come back with something that is correct. So that's a total success. Sometimes that server is redirecting you to somewhere else, and that becomes a 300 series of saying that, there's a redirect. So you're aware that there's a redirection also happening, but at the end of it, does it get served or not, will also be the result of it. 400 is a client error. Like it is basically things like 404 page not found and so on are the ones that So if I send a wrong URL, what I'll get on the website is a 404 page not found. So I'm the client who's sending the request and I've sent a wrong URL and hence I'm getting this. So the client is then aware that there's a problem at my end and I'll need to correct my request the way I sent it. The 500 series is where the server is having an issue. It is down, it is over occupied, and issues related to that side. And not only this, we also get additional information team. If depending on the actual error itself, we get more details, or if it's a success, also sometimes you're getting a package back and so on. So while there's an input payload, there's also a body that's getting generated in case there is something coming from it. Any API team, I don't think I've written it here. I've written it somewhere. There's typically a lot of strong documentation around it, in the sense that what we call it as things like a Swagger document and the schema of an API. That becomes very important. So here, let's see. It's primarily saying what are the various URLs, what are the methods you can perform on those URLs for any application given, and what are the expected outputs that you can get. Let's look at this website. It does almost very similar to. Are you all with me, team? Are we getting the fundamentals of APIs? Once we do it, we'll quickly go to a simple Java code. I wrote a very basic API request, a GET request for a regular website. But I've not yet imported or installed the request package. It'll be easily done. I just wanted to show it to you. But let's look at this. Any question meanwhile? Anyone in chat? I can take questions later or offline as well. But let me do it quick. Audio okay, video okay, team? Both of this going fine? Can I get you to interact on the chat, please? Just a quick message. Okay, let's get back. So what is Request Team? It's just a service provider, free of charge, for us to kind of play around and look at how APIs work in general. So the whole industry revolves around, and when we look at it also from a testing perspective, around data team. There is PII issues where your personal or private identifiable information should not get leaked. There are fake scamming issues. There are regular vulnerability issues where there's not really someone who's guilty about the action, but someone honestly made mistakes and so on. So all of these definitely need to get tested when we're building these applications, and especially when we're doing it with AI. How do we approach them? So look at this. Now, there is this application where there are users being hosted. Just the background of it, okay? So for each functionality of what an end user might do on the application, there is a corresponding documentation provided saying to get a list of users, this is my request URL and this is my response code, and here is the output that I'm getting in my body. So if I click on the next one, it is actually executing the same thing for me on a single user and getting me the details. There is also one more for single user not found. It says that, you know what, there is no users 23. So if you look at this URL itself, and let's put it into our code out here for now. This is the entire URL. So that becomes my endpoint. Okay. So there is your base URL, and then there's a path which we will start programming in, and it will become so easy for us. And what they're giving is just the path to it. So request https://request.in Till that section, they're not even mentioning in the request. Why? Because that's my base URL. That is not going to change for any of the URLs. Everything else is just has to be appended to it. So then I have list of resources, single resource. I can create a new user. So to create a new user, look at it. I also have an input in my request side. I can, let's say I've already created a user. I'm trying to log in. For a login, I am able to log in successfully if I provide the right email and password. Those are the two important information. This is my JSON data in which we're sending and also receiving. Login unsuccessful is doing something similar, but we got a response of 400. Why? Because I didn't provide all the required data within my JSON input. Right? Send the request. So this entire process is being executed out here. It's live on this application. So even if you create a user, it will quickly get deleted. So there could be multiple users who are concurrently using this application. It is more like a test platform for us to play around. So we always have the power to be able to just change the URLs if there's a web interface like this, or we will go into something out here at a code level and see if I can automate some of my process. Like things like I want to create a user, I want to list users and see if my user is there, and then I want to log in. So there are three things, let us say we want to achieve. I'm writing a blog comment. One, create user. To list users. And if any of you are still not very familiar guys with Python, just stay along, watch some of those I'm sorry, existing Python tutorials on IT Learn. See, that should give you fundamentally within 2-3 hours a good decent idea of the syntax. Even otherwise, as we keep coding, you'll understand most of the syntax. What is line 11 is a single line comment. It starts with a hash, so it doesn't get recognized as a code. Line 12 to 13, if you see, even with the color identification, it's a block format. So I can write a lot more text that is for our documentation purpose rather than for the system to understand. So my Python interpreter, when it goes through the code, it easily skips lines 11 to 16. And simplest things that we do, especially when we are writing new sets of code, is print statement team. Print is a way that whatever is happening or whatever I want at any point, I'm trying to put it out here onto my console. Can we quickly go to PyCharm then, team? I'm assuming that it should not be too tough for most of you, but it's a very, very simple process, team. Just search for PyCharm Community Edition, download it, and install. Before that, get your Python into place. If any of you facing any issues with the installations, let me know. I can do live session and troubleshoot it for you. But at the moment, let me also comment for now till here and do one code at a time. So any of my Python code that I write is having the extension .py at the end. So as soon as I see .py, I know it's a Python program. If the syntax of how each keyword within Python is used, everything is correct, you'll see that there is no, even the IDE helps you saying that there's no issue with that word itself. But Once you misspell something that is supposed to be recognizable otherwise, it would start giving you suggestions and recommendations as to something is going wrong. So the key thing before you can run a code is to make sure that there is no syntax error. So your code is clean, Python code. There's no um, issues in that. When you execute, there could be issues where you have runtime errors, where things like system failed, some kind of exception happened, null pointers, and so on. And those could be runtime team. It doesn't. We don't know when those will happen. So I'm printing high here, and this I'm saying at the end. Okay. Um, since I've commented on the line from 3 to 10, 11, and below here as well, none of this will get executed, team. But whatever will get executed, I just right click on the code on the ID itself and say run one. So 1.py is a simple, just a casual name that I gave to make sure that I'm able to run something. Now, tomorrow when we meet, I will write some more interesting Python codes that are will also help us to get some of a if statements, for loop, while, your functions, your class, all of this in place. It'll become, I'm sorry, one second. It'll become easy for you to start relating. So I don't want you to be overwhelmed with any code. Now, let's look at this code. While I'm trying to achieve something out here in using sectors.in, I still want to play around things. So the fundamental thing is any website, when we ping it, if it is functioning, it will return a 200 OK. That will be the status code, standard. If I'm trying to reach a URL that is incorrect, then I should get a 404 page not found or something like that. And so let's look at how we can do that. The, the first thing is something called as requesting. Python by itself doesn't come with all the built-in packages and libraries. The user has the power to load as and when needed. It's almost like your car comes with minimal accessories, but you could add on sound system, you could add on different upholstery, and whatever upgrade that you want. Same thing for your home and so on. So request is a package that is helping with any kind of API interaction for handling web requests, an API request. We can use request as a package. So as I told you, this is a new installation, so no packages installed, nothing. Most of the packages should be recognizable either by taking your mouse over it and see if there's a suggestion saying that currently there's no module name request that I created, but maybe there's an install package request. So we will continue to install a lot of packages this way, either through suggestion or by search. But what's important is making sure that we do some installation, install as and when we go. All right. Do you see this team installing package request at the bottom right corner? That's the status of it. So you could look at what's happening, and all your installations also can be nicely organized. So once you organize them, as you build different frameworks, different bots, you'll understand how we can package them into a very, very neat format. So for the end user, it should become extremely easy. So as part of this installation, it's done preliminarily, primarily a few things, and it is confirmed to us that successfully installed. So the red underline that came up as a prompt went away from it. And here it is giving me some documentation as well around what this mod package is all about, some version details and so on. Not so important as what we're going to do now. What do I have? I have a simple code. Let me see if I can zoom this further. Is it big enough? You can always to the editor changes, we'll come back to it. Appearance. There's the font I wanted to increase. Try zooming, but also. So what do I have? Print statement irrelevant. What is RES1? Anyone? Over the chat, over the questions. What is RES1 mean? And I have equal to, and then to the right of it, I request dot get something. So primarily, you can, without doing any declaration, just create variables. Variables are the ones that hold information. So you are able to store it by saying that, okay, in A, I have a number, in B, I have an info. And I can do anything with them. I can print A star 10. So since A is a number, my print statement automatically will first execute the multiplication of A with 10 and then print it. Now, if I said B star 10, I don't know if it will like it. But let's see what it will do. I just wanted to print B, just playing with it for now. Let's do a run. I'm not focusing on the output that will come after line 11, only the line 7 and 8 print statement. Oh, there you go. It actually printed info 10 times. That is cool. But the point is, A and B are basically variables that are holding information team. The data types and all that, things that typically come with programming languages like Java, where it is very strict about how you program, is not necessary. There's the same thing here. RES1 is nothing but a variable. What will it contain? If I said RES1 is 10, then it's an integer. This is a text, or it can be a boolean, or it can be a data. It can be a file that is linked to that. In this case, there is a method called request. Sorry, there is a package called request, within which there is a method called get. This is the same method that we are using in any API quality. You're saying, get me some information. So let's look at this here. When you're fetching data, only read. All of these are get transactions. See? All of these. When you're creating a new user, it is a post. When I'm updating a type of update, there is a put. There's another one, patch. So for request, when I say request dot, I should be able to see post. I should be able to see put. I should be able to see delete, and so on. So these are the inbuilt methods that we are able to perform using Python and request. Python request. So what does this method require? Require called get the URL thing. That is the main thing that it requires. Does it require any input package going in like a JSON body? Not for this. I'm just pinging a website. And I want to print the result one. What is it? So whatever comes here, I want to print it here. And I'll say RES1 is colon comma or even plus box, I guess, RES1. And if you notice, new line is a new line of code team. I don't need a semicolon at the end and so on. So very minimal characters that get us to achieve our objective using Python. All right. So the first thing I'm printing is result one. So as soon as I say RES1 dot, at this point, it knows that it is going to get details from that request that is being sent. So this basically RES1 is response one. That is what is the short form that I use it for. But this is what you can look at. You can get the status code, you can get cookies, you can get headers. You can get more details from that result. So you send one request. From one request, you can get multiple information. In fact, you can get the entire HTML file of that application You're anyway downloading it when you visit a website. It gets a version downloaded onto your system, and that is what you're looking at all the time till it gets refreshed. So now let's execute and see and observe where is what. So did you see this? It has taken certain time. The first three print statements came in a fraction of a second. But after we went to line 12, where I printed these characters, from here on, it took a little, I don't know exactly how much time, but we're going to measure the time as well. So even for every response, you'll notice, okay, let's see. What is the first thing that we got? Team status 200. Why? Because it's a valid one. Then any cookies that were sent back, these are the cookies that came back. This entire line out here. Is there any header that came? This is a header. And then at the end. So with simple ease, we were able to send a request team and get a response. Now, this is just a get. Tomorrow when we meet, we'll finish the same for other transactions and other types of responses. So different types of requests that we're sending and various types of status codes that we can expect to get. So let's say I give a very random thing like this as my URL endpoint and say this is my response to now and see what happens. So what do you think will happen? Does this URL exist? URL exists, but google.com will ping okay, but this specific endpoint does not. So what would happen? And as a programmer, it is always important, team, that you try and execute the code within your mind before you actually hit the run key. So you want to be able to anticipate that this is exactly how I expect my program to run. And then you challenge yourself by looking at how did it actually run. And if they're not the same, then we definitely have to improve ourselves next time to anticipate even better. All right, response 1 is done. Response 1, okay, sorry, this is response 2. See, there you go. So here, I should have, okay, number 1 mistake, I should have made this as response 2. That is why I'm seeing the same here. All right, so the response is 404. The URL does not exist, and hence the 404 has come up for us. So that's exactly the kind of documentation that is important for us to keep handy, team. Where is this API documentation? Click at that. Yeah, it is here. And when we meet tomorrow, we'll go through some of these other methods and play around a little bit more. And then we'll talk about how we can go into the testing aspect of it. So any questions, let me know, team. I think we're good for today as a session. You're right, Yogita, I just saw your speech. So it's very simple, team, very easy. Once the fundamentals are clear for us, it is very easy for us to expect what we have to do. So what if I were you and I'm new to, let's say, both Python and API and to a certain extent automation, what you would do is go to this website. Where is it? Regress.in. Why am I? Oh, it's the same. Sorry. And try and code for each and every one of these. So if I have to delete, how do I send the details? If I have to log in, what are the information? What happens if I give incorrect data? So that's a lot of playing around, team. And within a couple of days, you'll become so comfortable with Python and API together at the same time. And then it'll be easy for us to navigate further on to the framework and building some kind of a bot around it. Cool. So we did a couple of them and test automation for multiple endpoints. And we should look at some frameworks team here. The Karate framework will do, but we'll also look at our own integrated test data. Yeah. So a framework of a bot. And there's a very subtle difference team. Framework is something you still have to customize and implement at the end of it. Bot is ready to use with very minimal instructions. So there's no more configuration, there's no more, it is totally immediately deployable. That is the difference that we will do. All right, team, thank you everyone for joining in. Appreciate it. If there are no questions, I'll see you all tomorrow. I'll upload this video, team. The schedule, I've put it into GoToWebinar. So we're meeting Monday to Friday, every day. Actually, this week fully. Next week, we have the break for Christmas and New Year's, and then we'll start from first Monday of 2025. But just check the GoToWebinar link once. You should be able to see the schedule as of now. This week, we're meeting every day. Thank you all. Have a good one. See you tomorrow. Bye now.